We now move on to the 4 gear dungeons in the game. 3 of these follow the common setup of 2 standard enemy waves and the 3rd boss wave. The only one of these 4 to not follow this is the Spider's Den dungeon, which we shall discuss in the next video. Also, please note that these next few guides will purely be about the normal difficulty mode of these dungeons. The hard mode versions will be discussed as we move towards the harder levels of content. We start off with the Ice Golem's Peak. This is unfortunately overall the dungeon classed as the worst of the 4. This is due to its mechanics, the amount of time it takes, and finally the fact that for some reason the items that drop from it have a lower silver value than others. Plus, most of the artifact sets that drop here are fairly useless these days, bar a few. You will likely find that if you are partaking in a fusion or generally doing an Ice Golem tournament, it will take you a long time compared to the others. As mentioned before, the majority of the artifact sets are useless to most people. There are a few sets however that are still useful. These are Reflex, Cursed, and Provoke. Retaliation can also have some niche uses for some champions, but isn't quite as good as the other 3. I would also like to quickly mention that stage 20 is of particular note, as wave 2 of this stage contains 2 Terror Beast enemies, which can place reflect damage on all allies, but be aware of this before you set up a team that could potentially wipe itself out from this. Moving on to the boss itself. The boss wave will contain the boss and 2 minions. These minions are important to the mechanics of the encounter, as the boss can revive them, and also increases the damage of his passive ability by causing it to ignore defense based on how many of the minions are alive when the passive gets triggered. One of the minions can place decreased defense, and the other can place a heal reduction debuff. These, paired with the ignore defense ability of the boss's passive, can easily cause an instant wipe of your team if not dealt with correctly. This is also why people generally struggle to get themselves a consistent 100% success rate team for this dungeon for some time, or they will have to revert to farming lower stages on full auto, which is naturally not ideal. The boss itself has the standard boss passive, making it immune to hard control abilities, however not immune to turn meter control. His main passive is the one to worry about, which will automatically activate whenever direct damage takes him down past multiple HP thresholds. These are at 80, 60, 45, 30 and 15% HP. So standard teams will cause this to activate 5 times, which as mentioned before will ignore 50% of your defense per minion alive at the time of activation. He will then proceed to revive any of those minions that are dead. There is an important thing to understand about how this passive activates with damage, that being that it is direct damage that causes it. Therefore, if you use a poison heavy team and a HP burn, the damage tick from these will not cause the passive to kick in if they alone take him over each threshold. Do be aware though that a champion that can instantly activate these poisons or burns will activate the passive. This is because instant activation is classed as direct damage. Also note that the Blessing Brimstone is also classed as direct damage. The boss also has an active ability on a 4-turn cooldown, which will hit your full team and attempt to place decreased accuracy on them for 2 turns. This can be blocked, resisted or removed. His standard attack is purely a damage ability and has no other effects. A final mechanic to note is that the minions can be affected by block revive debuff, which once done will rule them out of the rest of the fight. Champions such as Phoenix are highly regarded for this fight due to having this ability. Lydia can also be used but is different, this being that her block revive works around her passive and has a cooldown, as opposed to Phoenix applying it to the enemy he specifically kills, so be aware of small details such as that. Potential strategies for this boss fight are generally to make your team tanky and resilient as opposed to high damage. Also, bringing decreased attack for the boss is generally a must. As mentioned, if you have access to it, a champion with block revive on the minions will drastically improve your success rate, as it can negate the bulk of the danger for the fight. Debuffs like weaken and decreased defense could cause you problems, as you increase the chance of quickly breaking through multiple HP thresholds of the passive in quick succession, which may give you less time to recover after each. Due to normal teams needing to be built this way is why it takes longer to farm this dungeon. As your account progresses, it is possible to have some champions solo this fight with food to level. This will generally be later when you have access to a lot more high level gear, and will usually entail the champion being equipped with regeneration and immortal gear, and having higher levels of HP, defense, resistance, and even speed and accuracy depending on the specific champion used. An example of this that everyone will eventually get from the Tag Team Arena Bazaar is Drexthar. His passive causing attackers to receive a HP burn, and his A1 attack also having a chance to place HP burn. He will be slower than some poison champions, such as Urost from the Doom Tower Hard secret rooms, since an enemy can only have 1 HP burn at a time.